Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King. And what if I told you that there was a key comic more than 50 years old that introduced a concept to the world of pop culture that resonates not just throughout comics, but is known worldwide in music and in television and just across the whole globe, and yet you could get this key comic for less than $10 right now on eBay? You'd probably say, "But Scott, that's crazy." And then you'd say, "But what is that comic? Tell me." Well, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to go over in this single issue spotlight a key issue that I think is wildly underrated, totally undervalued, and that should be in everybody's collection. And that is, wait for it, it's Life with Archie number 60. Okay, so why do I think this is so important? Well, take a look at the cover here. I'm going to switch it to this side so I can get a better look at it myself. We've got Pop Tate in the background saying, "You know what they want now? The girls in go-go cages. If you ask me, they all belong in cages." And here's Jughead, Reggie, and Archie. They're wearing matching suits, they're playing instruments, and they're singing "We're the Greatest, We're the Archies." And then down here it says, "Introducing a spectacular double bill, the man from Riverdale and the Archies." So this is the first appearance of the Archies. And the Archies, of course, are the band that Archie and the gang play in. Now, in these first issues, it's actually just the three guys. Betty and Veronica aren't actually in the band yet. And of course, the Archies are famous. They're world famous. That's because in the fall of 1968, the Archies had a cartoon called The Archies that came out. It was extremely popular, and it featured the whole gang in a band, and they have a van that had the Archies painted on the side of the van. They'd drive around, they'd have adventures, and they'd sing their Archie songs, and then they'd have a bunch of stories about the Archie gang, and it was wildly popular. It was so popular, in fact, that it inspired a whole bunch of different knockoffs. Scooby-Doo was originally a knockoff of the Archies. The Scooby Gang was originally supposed to be a band. That's why they had that van that they drove around in. And the developers decided it was too similar to the Archies, so they took away the band aspect. But there were several knockoffs. The popularity of the Archies inspired the animation company to go back to Archie and ask if they had anything else they could do. And in turn, Archie turned their second tier title Josie into Josie and the Pussycats. They introduced the Pussycats, turned it into a band, and that became a giant sensation. And then in 1969, as a result of the cartoon, they released some music, including this hit song "Sugar Sugar," which became one of the biggest hits of the entire decade, has sold tens of millions of copies around the world, and is world famous. And the Archies aren't just, a passing 60s fad. In the comics, the Archies as a concept has become a key part of the story for all of the characters. We get stories featuring the Archies continue through every decade. And in fact, just a couple years ago, there was an ongoing regular Archies series that Archie Comics was putting out that was all about the band. They've had Battle of the Bands where they meet up with the other bands in the Archie universe, like Josie and the Pussycats. There's all sorts of stuff involving the Archies. And Archie himself, being a musician, has become a core part of his character. If you watch the show Riverdale, the fact that Archie is a singer-songwriter is a major part of the show. And so all of those concepts, everything, the music, the cartoon, and everything, it was actually introduced in this issue, Life with Archie number 60. I think a lot of people, if they even think about it, they assume that the Archies, the band in the comics, was based on the cartoon. But it's actually the other way around. The cartoon debuted in the fall of 1968. This issue of Life with Archie actually came out in 1967. It was this concept in the comic that inspired the cartoon. And what they were doing in here was actually, it was a parody of the hit TV show The Monkees, which of course itself was inspired by the Beatles. If you read these stories here, the style, it's very obviously the Monkees. They're trying to emulate the style of the Monkees TV show, and it not very successfully. This was a period in the Life with Archie title where they were doing parodies. So it mentioned on the cover here the Man from Riverdale. That was where it's all of the Archie gang, but they're spies. It's specifically spoofing the show, The Man from Uncle, but it's just sort of spoofing the whole spy genre. During this period, they had also been doing the superhero parodies with Archie as Pureheart the Powerful, and all the different characters ended up becoming different superheroes or supervillains. That was actually phased out and replaced by the Archies. Not my favorite era of the book, but I think this issue is extremely important. The idea of the Archies are known worldwide, the music's known worldwide. Riverdale, the characters are based in part on this, and yet I paid less than $10, including shipping, for this on eBay just this month. And you can just contrast that to something like, for instance, Josie and the Pussycats number 45. That is the first appearance of Valerie, so it's got that going for it. But that book's taken off. You can't get that in any grade for, under $50 or so. Even the first appearance of Pureheart the Powerful in Life with Archie number 42 is likely to cost you more than Life with Archie number 60, with the first appearance of the Archies. So when you just look at the cultural impact of Life with Archie 60, it just seems way undervalued to me. And I think the other thing about people not quite understanding the timeline that helps keep the prices down is that because people think this came out after the TV show, they think that there's probably a lot more of these around than there actually are. Because of the huge popularity of the TV show, Archie massively expanded their line of comics, and their comics started selling absolutely like crazy. So that's why from Archie comics dated from like around 1969 up till 1978 or 79 or so, they seem like there's billions of them because they were selling just like hotcakes, huge amounts of Archie books from all different titles. But this came out before that. They came out before the cartoon's popularity. And Archie books before the cartoon's popularity, while they still sold well, they didn't sell nearly as many copies. And Life with Archie was not a top tier book compared to something like Archie itself. That hence the switching of the features, between issues 42 and here. They changed the format, they changed the features multiple times, trying to figure out a formula to keep the book going. And eventually, with the popularity of the cartoon, it just switched to a straight gag strip like Pep or something for 2 or 3 years, until they eventually decided to go back to the original format. So to me, this is, again, a seminal key issue for Archie collectors specifically, but also really I think it's wildly underrated and undervalued as a key issue across the board, considering it's had a much larger cultural impact than all the dozens and dozens of first appearances of obscure superheroes and supervillains that are just going for multiple times what you can get this for. Every time a movie comes out, they're like, maybe this will have some cultural impact, let's sell this beat up first appearance for $500. Meanwhile, we have books like this that have already had a gigantic cultural impact and continue to have a gigantic cultural impact, and they're just totally overlooked. So anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. Run out there and get your copies of Life with Archie number 60. Hopefully at some point this will start getting the attention it deserves. I think there's a lot of cool sort of key Archie books that really fly under the radar for most collectors. And so from time to time, I like to look at individual issues in my collection. I was excited to finally pick up a copy of this, and that's it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you want, I can share more tips of things that I think should be more collectible. And I'm happy to do videos about whatever topics you might find interesting. I've got a subscribe circle, and I've got some videos on either side and all that sort of thing. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.